Okay, we have one more video here on rules of inference, and this one here is where we're going to decide whether or not an argument is correct. We do have some quantifiers here because we can see in this first sentence that we say that Quincy likes all action movies. So we do have some of the quantified rules of inference, and I also put the original modus ponens rule down here, which again says that if P is true and P implies Q is true, then Q follows. Now we have to be careful that we don't try to use this rule in a way that it wasn't intended. We'll see if that comes up here. Okay, so again, if we're going to try to determine whether or not this is true, we're going to have to translate these sentences. We're going to need some predicates. So we're going to need one predicate that's likes x comma y. It's going to take two arguments, and it's going to mean that x likes movie y. We're going to have a premise A of x, which means x is an action movie. Okay, now we can start to translate each of these premises. Now this first sentence says Quincy likes all action movies. That doesn't really lend itself to some of the logic propositions we have, but if we think about what it's really saying, is that it's saying that if a movie is an action movie, then Quincy likes it. So we can use a quantification. We can say for all x, A of x implies that Quincy likes it. Well, the likes predicate has two arguments. We'll fill Quincy in for the first argument and leave x as the movie as the second argument. Now make sure you notice here, you always have to be careful with predicates that have two arguments, that the x over here is actually a movie, right? It makes sense for A of x to apply to x being a movie, and also over here x being a movie. We couldn't have x represent the person because it couldn't be a movie over here and a person over here. So we have to be careful that we set this up right. This now says that for every movie x, if x is an action movie, then Quincy likes it. That's what we really wanted to capture. Okay. Now the second sentence says Quincy likes the movie 8 Men Out. So we can add a specific instance here. Change that. Let's try that again. We'll say likes Quincy, comma, 8 Men Out. Just abbreviating here using the number to save myself a little writing. The conclusion, therefore, is that 8 Men Out is an action movie. So you can think about whether or not that actually makes sense. If you know the movie, you probably know that this is not in fact true. But let's see what's really going on here as far as rules of inference go. Well, if we take this particular universally quantified statement and apply it to 8 Men Out, we would be saying A of 8 Men Out would imply likes Quincy of 8 Men Out. Okay? So we've instantiated that for the one specific occurrence of the movie 8 Men Out. Now, if we put these two statements together, if we look at this carefully, we really have something like P implies Q here. If we think about, let's say, the 8 Men Out being the P, and we think about the action movie being the P and the liking being the Q, we really have P implies Q. And then this sentence or premise up here that Quincy likes 8 Men Out is really equivalent to saying we have Q. Now this rule over here, our rule of inference, says, well, if we have P and P implies Q, then Q follows. But that's not exactly what we have here. We have P implies Q and Q. And now they're trying to conclude that P follows. In fact, this is wrong. This is what we call a fallacy. Fallacy is a false argument. If you have P implies Q and you have Q, what you're really saying is that P implies true. Right? We know that the conclusion of our implication is true, right? Well, the problem with that is we don't know anything about P. because we know that false implies true as a true statement and true implies true as a true statement. So if the only thing we know is that the conclusion is true, we don't really know which of these two hypotheses we started with. Now the modus ponens rule, on the other hand, up here tells us that if Q is true, right, then if P is true, right, I was just going to go in a circle there. If P is true, right, then you have true implies something over here, right, and this is not allowed to be false. This has to be true implies true. So modus ponens, right, is not violated here. This is not actually modus ponens. This is a fallacy, and there are names to the fallacies, but it's not important for us to know all the names of the fallacies. Just know that we have a false argument. So this is not a proper conclusion to draw. Just because this is an action movie, just because Quincy likes this movie doesn't mean it's an action movie. The original statement doesn't say that Quincy only likes action movies. Now, if there was an action movie and Quincy didn't like it, then we'd have a problem. But that's not exactly what's going on here. So you got to be a little careful with these, but with some practice, you can get the hang of it.